Alrighty, good afternoon. My name is Michael McCooch, and I am a department chair at Johnson & Wales University. Thank you for joining us for the 2022 Food Innovation and Technology Symposium. We are excited to bring this program to you. Before we get started, I'd like to review a few housekeeping items. If you have any questions during this session that you would like to ask any of the panelists, please add them to the Q&A feature at the bottom of your Zoom screen. This session is also being recorded. This symposium brings together a mix of the best and brightest of our industry. If there is one common factor underscoring all of today's presentations, it's the impetus to create food systems that are more environmentally, economically, and culturally sustainable. How do we become advocates for change? By working together and listening across disciplines, in the hopes that these conversations that can inspire new ways of thinking and collaborating to make a difference for our industry. Which leads us to our next panel, Peak Performance, Fueling the Modern Athlete. I have the honor of introducing this session's moderator, Chef Jonathan Poyero. Chef Poyero is a graduate of the Culinary Nutrition Program from Johnson & Wales University. Following his graduation, he completed his registered dietetic internship with the U.S. Army and worked in various medical centers as a clinical dietitian and chief of food service. He quickly established himself as one of the lead sports dietitians in the Army and worked with various elite units, such as the U.S. Army Rangers, Special Forces, and he eventually became the division dietitian for the 101st Airborne Division and deployed with them to Afghanistan. Now, Chef Poyero uses his skills educating the students at Johnson & Wales University as an associate professor in the Culinary Nutrition Program. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome my friend and colleague, Chef John Poyero.
Chef, thank you so much for the very warm welcome. It is an honor to be here and to work alongside you. And I have the distinct pleasure now of introducing our three panelists who I've gotten to know quite a bit over the past few years. One of them is a former student of mine, and I like to consider them all friends and great people. So first, let me introduce to you Mike Schauer. Mike is 28 years old, and he's currently the assistant chef for the Boston Bruins. He spent the last 7 years cooking professionally for a number of sports teams, such as the Atlanta Braves, Chicago Cubs, Boston Red Sox, the New England Patriots, and now as well, the Boston Bruins. He says it's been an absolute dream for him to cook for players that he's looked up to his entire life, as well as been part of two teams that have won the World Series. Once with the Chicago Cubs in 2016, and the other with the Red Sox in 2018. He grew up in Massachusetts, so Boston has always been his home, and he's a fan to this day. Now, he graduated in 2016 with a Bachelor's of Science in Culinary Nutrition and was able to jumpstart his career after his internship with the Braves for the 2015 MLB season. And this year, he's been able to join the Boston Bruins to see the in and outs of how hockey season operates. And he likes to say that he plans on winning the Stanley Cup with the Boston Bruins and to continue his amazing journey. Next is Keith Garman. Keith graduated with a degree in Culinary Arts and Food Service Management, and he's from Johnson & Wales. He refined his craft in some of Boston's most decorated restaurants, including Number 9 Park and Boston Shops. In 2014, Keith joined Alden and Harlow to become the chef de cuisine. Over the following 4 years, Alden and Harlow was named Best Restaurant in Boston, the James Beard semifinalist, and Best Restaurants in the World by Condé Nast. Keith was named one of Boston's top young chefs by Boston Innovation in 2016. Hailing originally from Kraft Hockeyville, USA, and home of the cult classic Slapshot, Johnston, PA, Keith grew up playing and celebrating the sport of hockey. 2018, he joined the Boston Bruins as their organization's first team chef, bringing to the organization his creative takes on approachable food that is flavor-driven, sustainable, and nutritionally sound for both performance and recovery. Ultimately helping fuel the team over the past 4 years, supporting the Atlantic Division title, President's Trophy, Eastern Conference Championship, and Stanley Cup final appearance. Keith is also an avid supporter and volunteer for local and urban agriculture, No Kid Hungry, Cooking Matters of Massachusetts, and a Master Mason of Columbian Lodge. And last but certainly not least, I have the honor of introducing Justin Bethel. Justin is originally from South Carolina, where he excelled at football from an early age. Originally, not many people know this, but he wanted to come to Johnson & Wales to study the culinary arts as well. But he was offered to play football in college and went to Presbyterian College. After college, he was drafted by the Arizona Cardinals in 2012, where he played for 6 seasons, and he's been with the New England Patriots ever since March of 2019, playing both the cornerback and special teams positions. So ladies and gentlemen, join me in welcoming our 3 panelists today.
How's it going? Thank you, Chef.
Welcome, gentlemen. As always, it's an honor to be able to talk to you, and I hope we can go through this concept of peak performance. Now, for those of you that are not dietitians or sports chefs, sports nutrition, in my opinion, is a hard subject. There's a lot of misinformation out there. There's a lot that goes into this field. So just to quickly go over the science, and I don't want to put you all to sleep. As a dietitian, what I do is I look at my patients, at athletes, at Justin, and I take into account their height, their weight, obviously their sex, what sport they play, and what their primary energy system is for that sport. Are they a power athlete? Are they a strength athlete? Are they a combination of both? And then I look at the sport and I say, what day or days are they performing? How do I have to fuel them over the week so that way on game day, they're performing at their peak capability? Some days I'm going to look at more calories. Some days I'm going to be looking at from a recovery standpoint. How do I drop inflammation in their body, excuse me? Because as Justin can attest to, playing football is like getting into a car accident. You're getting pounded. So your body's in this state of inflammation. How can we reduce that inflammation from food, from using the nutrients available to us? And then as that dietitian, I then turn my menus or my concepts over to the chefs, Mike, Keith. You gentlemen have the hard job of taking the science and implementing and putting that into food. And what I talk about at school with my students is how to do that. But I think that's a skill set that not many people have. Obviously, when you look at chefs, you talk about flavor, you look at color, height, texture, but there's so much science that goes into everything. So gentlemen, I hope you can help to talk about this with me today. Again, thank you for being here. So starting off, my first question is, how did you guys get interested in cooking? Like, what was the driving factor behind you wanting to get into the field of culinary arts? Mike?
For me, I ended up going to a vocational school actually in high school. So it was one of the first trades that I picked up at a very young age. And the chef that I was working with just absolutely made me fall in love with it. And I had a good couple of buddies that I always hung out with in the same class as me. So it kind of just really felt warm, felt like the right place for me. And ever since then, it really was just all about owning a restaurant and kind of just getting right into the field of cooking and just getting fully into it.
Okay. Keith?
Similar story to Chef Mike. I also was lucky to go to a high school that offered what was called career pathways, where on top of your normal curriculum of math, science, English, that kind of thing, you had the opportunity to choose electives in a area that you were looking to either go to school or maybe go directly into the workforce with. And I joined the culinary program there. It was a great experience. And my teachers suggested Johnson & Wales. So the rest is history and from that standpoint. And then post-school, originally really just wanting to work for some of the best chefs out there in the restaurant business. Early on, my first sparks to get into the business were from coming home from school and watching the syndicate old replays of the show called Great Chefs, which really opened my eyes to a wide range of things that I hadn't been exposed to. And you see things like whole loaves of foie gras getting roasted and basted, and baked Alaska flambés, and all kind of stuff that really opened you up to a whole new world. And I really wanted to dive into that. And pursued it through the high school program and then into college and continued my career here in Boston.
So I know transitioning to the world of sports nutrition, being a sports chef, Mike, I know I had the opportunity of working with you when you were in college and helping to put you in your internship. So I know where you got that interest of sports, but Keith, how did you transition from restaurants, Justin, before we jump to you answering the question about your passion, Keith, how did you jump from, yeah, I want to be that restaurant chef to, you know what, I'm going to be a team chef. I want to work with athletes.
Well, that at a base level starts with my passion for the sport of hockey. I grew up playing it all the way through to, I almost played for Johnson Wales, but I didn't end up doing it. But love the sport. Was an avid follower the whole way through my restaurant experience as well. So when the opportunity arose to be able to combine both passions and help contribute to the success through food of the Bruins organization, it was an opportunity that I would ultimately have regretted for the rest of my life if I didn't pursue it. And, I'm super grateful that it's worked out the way it has. But in terms of the transition there, what's been, and I will get into this as we continue, I bet, but being able to utilize the repertoire that you learn through your time in the restaurant industry of these really like exciting, delicious types of techniques and foods and cuisines and flavor profiles, and applying them for your the athletes that you're cooking for to kind of translate that passion to them that maybe they weren't particularly foodies, or food isn't quite the high up on the priority list that it is for us as chefs, to kind of ignite that passion within them.
Gotcha. Awesome. Now, Justin, two questions for you. How did you originally get interested in cooking? And, we had the opportunity to meet earlier this year, and you're telling me how you planned on going to Johnson & Wales. Outside of that, how does your passion for cooking benefit you, do you think, on and off the field?
So yeah, for me, I think getting into cooking kind of started early. I grew up, my dad was kind of always the one cooking. So I kind of grew up watching him cook all the time, and you try to imitate your parents. And so as I got to high school, kind of like everybody else, they had a culinary program, and my reason for taking the class was I was just like, it's right before lunch, I can just make my own food. I'll never have to get school lunch again. So I took the class, started falling in love with just making all these different dishes, and getting to explore the options of flavors. And so as I was getting close to graduating, we took I think it was my junior or senior year, we took a trip to Johnson & Wales in Charlotte, and I was like, oh man, this is cool. I would love to do this. But it kind of, obviously I didn't end up in that field. It was kind of, try and get school for free for football, or pay for it, and football kind of worked out for me.
I think it worked out pretty well for you.
Yeah, yeah. And so as I got into the league, I tried to keep up with it, keep it going, and try to keep my skills that I learned in high school, keep them up to par and learn more as I watch videos and watch different things. For me, I think it helps me being able to cook, just kind of controlling my own meals, not having to order. First off, it saves you money, and then not having to order all your meals, kind of being able to make your things fresh, keeping a lot of preservatives and stuff out of your food, which as you said, it kind of affects your body, those things, especially during season when you're getting beat up every day and your body's trying to recover, but you had some McDonald's and now your body's trying to fight off the McDonald's too. So it's definitely been really nice to be able to make my own meals, and it's really cool now I have a daughter, so it's like being able to cook for my family and those things.
That's awesome. Now I'm going to jump with some questions here, because you kind of were hinting at that, Justin. Do you, as a player, I mean, I know Keith and Mike, they feed their players pretty darn well. As a player, do you feel that it's hard to consume what you need to be able to perform at your peak capability? Or you, I mean, or do you just, is it second nature to you at this point in time?
I think early on it was kind of hard, especially so when I first got to the league, with Arizona, we didn't have like we didn't have like all the nutritional things, wasn't, you know, the hype of everything. And we were still like we'd have like a lot of, they bring in food from other places. And then once we did start, you know, they started doing their own food and stuff. It was like that. It was so healthy. It was like guys were just like, oh man, I, I know it's supposed to be good for me, but I don't want to eat it. It does not taste good. And like you said, I've been in the league for a while. So as you get older, it's you kind of just eat because it's like, you know, I need to do this. But with the Patriots, our Ted, our guy who manages everything, he does a great job. Like, and our chefs, they do a great job of putting meals together and making sure they taste really good, and having a lot of options throughout the days, snacks, all kind of different things. So they definitely do a good job making it easy. Where, like I said, earlier in my career, I think it was harder trying to eat a whole bunch, keep your weight, all this thing. But as I've gotten older, it's definitely become a lot easier.
Awesome. Now, going back to you, Mike, Keith, as the chefs, you know, as the dietitian, I say, all right, you know, this player needs X amount of calories a day. I want to focus on carbohydrates, moderate protein. How do you all as chefs balance the calorie and macro needs for your players daily? You know, along with that, what I think is incredibly hard to do is to plan this out for teams that are traveling. So how do you do it in season at home? I mean, Mike, you've had the opportunity to do it for baseball, a little bit for the Patriots, now hockey, so you can talk that, but how do you do it for travel as well?
So yeah, with baseball, that was definitely some of our hardest challenges, was to figure out the road food, because half the time you have to look up different restaurants and hope that their catering system worked out for you. And obviously sometimes it didn't, sometimes it did. But then I know there was a lot of push to try to have someone go on the road with them. But then again, that comes in with a lot of other problems that you have to think about with, do they have something to cook with? Is there an area where they can cook? Can they travel with it? Or where are they going to serve it? All like the health questions. So that was definitely interesting to learn with the baseball. And then jumping over to the football, again, with Ted and Josh there, they do such a great job of organizing all of it, where from what I know, Josh is able to do a lot of the road stuff where he has a lot of control of the quality of food coming in, how it's getting cooked, how it's getting served, and everything else like that. So that's been very cool to understand and watch his approach to it. And then now working with Keith, it's awesome to learn what hockey players need for their calories, the kind of different starches that they might want instead of the typical just white rice or brown rice. So it's really cool to just have these different sports and have different athletes all needing different things, and getting like a better grasp of overall of it.
Keith?
So the team travel aspect, it's most certainly a challenge, and it's a challenge that we've definitely tried to attack head on for sure. And it's an ongoing process for sure as well. But ultimately, it's strong communication between myself, the nutritionist, as well as the team service organizer who plans the trips and organizes the hotel meals and the Chef Mike was saying, the restaurant meals, caterers, the arena meals, et cetera, et cetera. Collaborating with the nutritionists, that we're sending menus to them that are appropriate for meeting those needs, and then making sure that the establishments can put them out and provide the correct ingredients, and then kind of adjusting on the fly if we need to, saying like, they don't have this specific protein that we want or this specific ingredient, or hey, they're going to charge us way too much money for this. Is there a substitution that we can make for this? Or, being flexible and not ingrained that it has to be a certain way. But certainly as well, especially during playoff times, we try to send small care packages with them. So like Justin was saying, that while maybe we're not providing the main dinner, we're able to provide them with shelf-stable, nutritious snacks they can have throughout the course of their away trip, so that, if there's a long gap of time between a practice and getting back to the hotel, or a game and getting on a flight, that there's sustenance there to help recover or refuel or whatever their needs might be. And then here at the home base, maintaining a full umbrella aspect of offerings, where everybody's needs are going to be totally different. There's not one specific size fits all for everybody here. One guy might need way more protein, another guy might need a lot more calories period to sustain their energy level, or trying to put on weight, or trying to lose weight, whatever their specific need might be. Making sure that we have a variety of offerings, be it proteins to different starches, to different vegetables, fruits, healthy fats, all of that, that it's there for them. And then the specific consultation guidance of what's applicable to them would come from our nutritionist.
So you just said something that I want to ask you a question on. How is it for you as chefs, and Justin, for you as a player? How is that interaction with the sports dietitian, the nutritionist? Because again, we have such a scientific mindset that we're like, hey, we need to really hit this threshold of this caloric need, or this macro, or this vitamin. And then, sometimes we're not thinking from the culinary perspective. So from that culinary perspective, where do you all get your inspiration? How do you work with that dietitian, interact, and say, hey, I understand what, you might want, but this is what we can do culinary wise. And Justin, as that player, how do you deal with Ted and say, hey, I get it, but for me, I might feel this way, or I feel better when I do this. Mike?
So with the Red Sox, my first year, we didn't have a registered dietitian on board. And then the second year we did, but we didn't get to these big kind of conversations going over the vitamins and all this kind of little stuff, maybe with an injury, does that player need more of this, need more of that? But then once I got to the Patriots, obviously with Ted being there, it was your brain melted every single time you talk to the guy. He's a very, very, very smart, but he would instantly call you out, oh, why'd you put that much turmeric in it? We already have this supplement of turmeric, the guys don't need it anymore. It's going to do this, it's going to do that. So that was probably my favorite part of working with the Patriots, is just being able to have those 5-10 minute talks with Ted. And it was just awesome. It was just, he's a really cool guy. And then with the Bruins, we get interactions here and there, but there's never been any big pushback for any of the dishes that we kind of create. We talk to the players, we kind of get their sense of what their flavors are and kind of how they want the dishes to be. And then obviously we'll go ahead and take the dishes, look for a way to make it gluten-free, make it dairy-free, just so that there are all of those check marks going down the list for the nutritional aspect of it when we come back to the RD.
Gotcha. And Justin, what about you dealing with Ted? How is that as the player?
Yeah, like Mike said, Ted is a very smart individual. I think he does a great job. There's, like I said, him and Josh, they do such a good job of having so many different options. For me, I'm not a picky eater, so I'm oh, this looks like it tastes good, so I'll just try it. There are guys, who have their own specific meals and things like that, and I think he does a good job, working with them. When it comes to like vitamins and all that stuff, like I'll just tell him like, hey, I want to start taking vitamins or whatever, and he'll have it all what you need for what you're doing, your position, what he thinks you need, and they'll have it all set up for you. So he definitely makes it super easy to, just kind of incorporate it into your everyday plan without really having your mind worry too much about it.
Nice. And Keith, I know you've got Julie up in Boston that Mike was talking about, but from your perspective, like as that head chef, you've got these great culinary ideas. You're like, hey, I want to put X, Y, Z on the menu. Are you able to balance that? Are you able to do majority of what you want to do? Do you feel like it's hard sometimes?
Well, this kind of goes back to our transitioning from restaurant into athletics chef, where I think a lot of success that I'm able to have here is due to previous experience with gaining a repertoire at the restaurants, because flavor profiles and techniques in and out pretty thoroughly. And then from there, you're able to kind of just puzzle piece little things together where your original idea perhaps might have not been as nutritionally dense, but then you can take one, substitute out the fat for a healthier fat, or a different ingredient that really you're achieving the final version that you want, that's super satisfying flavor-wise, texture-wise, all the above, but then also satisfying the nutritional need. And Julie and I have had a great relationship, and that's built upon trust. She's kind of laid out the groundwork of kind of, this is what we want, this is kind of how we want to build our philosophy. How you get there is kind of up to you. And then we'll kind of address things if they pop up along the way, which they do, and then easily solve. And, then we kind of can boil that down a little bit more on a micro level with individual preferences and needs, where we're adjusting one or two things here because we know that this person might need a little less salt, or this person might need a little more calories to make up weight loss, or recovering from an injury, to kind of do slight modifications, but keeping the general umbrella the same.
Awesome. So I don't want to suck up too much time. I want to make sure I get to the questions that have been popping up in our Q&A. So I've just got one more, and I think this is to the benefit of our students. From your perspectives, obviously as chefs and Justin as a player, what do you think it's necessary for our students who want to go out to be sports dietitians, sports chefs? What do you think they should know? I mean, are there certain culinary skills? Are there management skills, financial skills? Justin, from that interaction with the player and with the staff, if you could speak of anything from what you see that would benefit you for you as a player to gain the trust, or that dietitian to get the trust of the players. I'm always looking for ways to make our future students better in this field, and to make sure that we're setting them up for success. Mike?
So yeah, 100%. Obviously, culinary skills, that has to come first. I think understanding flavors, how you can combine them, understanding the different fats, the goods, the bads, A through Z, all that kind of stuff. And then really understanding your time management, seeing how much you can get done in a certain amount of time for a certain pre-game meal or a post-game meal. And then also being just super flexible, especially with baseball. You can get rained out. There's a lot of different delays that could happen. And a lot of pitchers, a lot of catchers have certain routines of when they want to eat. So that gets all switched up with different times and delays. So time management is huge, especially with sports. And then also just being able to kind of put stuff behind you fast, because a lot of stuff happens. There's a lot of egos that go around. Some people might just say something that doesn't mean anything, but can definitely come across as like mad or something like that. And when you're working these long hours, you have to be able to put those behind you and just constantly keep your head down, keep grinding, and just put out the best food that you really can.
Keith?
Yeah, just to kind of piggyback off Chef Mike, I agree with all of what he said. Your foundations begins with your cooking skill, being able to know the foundational aspects of that. And then as you get to a team chef type position, you need to know the back end aspects that aren't present on the plate. You need to know how to manage food costs. You need to know how to manage inventory, be able to come up with dishes that are cross-utilizing product, because the team's going on a road trip for a week and a half and you need to use the product that you have instead of ordering new product that's going to sit there for, till they come back. Or, even that things like maintenance that you don't think about, but the chef's ultimately responsible for making sure it's taken care of, that, that the blender gets broken, that you can get it fixed, or the refrigerator, or things that might happen and that you don't expect, like the refrigerator goes down and you got to make adjustments so you're still able to, safely achieve your sanitation practices without sacrificing what the team needs, because ultimately, like, they still need fed one way or the other. So kind of knowing those skills as well. And then that kind of looking toward the future, when you have all these baseline skills, then you can kind of adjust the way you operate to be more sustainable, be more environmentally conscious. A thing that Chef Mike and I have been talking about a lot that we want to do to improve the program here is grow our own food. But that's because we have the systems in place and the know-how in place to run an efficient operation, that we can kind of put extra energy into making more creative dishes, grow our own food, etc. Things like that.
That's awesome. Justin, for you?
I'd say as a player, and this kind of goes back to what I said earlier when I was in Arizona. It's kind of, you gotta be able to listen to your players, and listen to the people you're feeding, regardless of how healthy and good you think it is. If we're not going to eat it, it doesn't matter. So I think being able to come up with different flavor profiles, giving us options, having flexibility goes a long way. Giving players options, because there's always going to be somebody who don't like something. So just keep that in mind, and do your thing, but kind of take our suggestion, at least make us feel like you're listening to our suggestions, like you're trying.
I think that's important. I think, and I've always stressed this in class, that, and Mike can attest because he's heard me say this a couple times, that no matter how nutritious a dish is, if it doesn't taste amazing, we're not going to get patients or clients or athletes to eat it. So I think you just hit the key thing right there, Justin. It's got to taste awesome, and that respect for you all as the players, as our customer base, we need to have that as the chefs. And I know Keith and Mike absolutely do, but for our future chefs out there that are students, they need to learn that and not maybe put so much ego into everything. Be humble, be respectful. Looking into our Q&A chat, we've got a couple questions here that I'm going to go through. The first one is a question about smoothies. how much are smoothies being used in sports nutrition? And I'm going to tack onto this. Keith, Mike, you guys were saying that you're giving to-go bags to the players as snacks throughout, the road trips. What types of other snacks are you giving them that you're seeing that players want more of, or maybe want less?
So with smoothies, at least everything that I've worked with, every single day, there's smoothies. Some operations definitely have different setups for sure, but there's always at least somebody making smoothies for you at any given time. Or there's like after practice, there's a line of smoothies put out, or after a pre or
Looks like we might be losing Mike there for a second. So Keith, we'll jump to you if you can keep on answering that question about smoothies being used.
Yeah, so smoothies are a daily thing that we make. We kind of make a carte blanche fruit, banana, almond milk smoothie. And then on top of that, players on their own make their specific catered smoothie that they like or need, that's got protein in it, collagen. Maybe one player likes chia seeds, maca root, flax seeds, whatever their preference or what needs. They have the ability to do that on their own. We have a smoothie station. And then snack-wise, we make our famous snack is the Power Balls, which is essentially date puree, a nut butter of choice, depending on what kind of flavor profile we're going with, rolled oats, and then we kind of like to do a texture coating on it, be it flaxseed or we take rice cakes and pulse them in the Robo Coop to kind of give almost like a Rice Krispie type texture to it. Cocoa nibs, chocolate chips, dried fruits, things of that nature. We've done trail mixes before, granola bars, but I would say those are definitely the hard hitters.
Gotcha. Justin, for you, do you find yourself going towards the smoothies? Is there a large amount of that out there for the Patriots, or is it more different types of, post-workout snacks?
No, it's definitely the smoothie station is pretty much going the whole day. Some guys have them in the morning. Some guys. So when COVID happened and we were going through all that, we transitioned into like on an app where you order pretty much everything you want off the app, and so it kind of you can personalize your smoothies and you can set the time for when you want it. A lot of guys will have it right after, coming right off the field from practice. They'll have their own personalized ones, and they'll also have like 3 or 4 different, just a bunch of different selections that they've made. I usually go with a chocolate peanut butter one, and so they have it all throughout the day. And like you said, like Keith said, there's always players who have their own. You can go back there whenever you want and make it however you want to make it. Or that you just tell them they'll make it for you. But yeah, the smoothies are always going.
That's awesome. I've got a question specifically for you, Justin. When did nutrition click for you? The question reads, the importance of nutrition for performance, that is. Nutrition is important, especially in college athletes. It's often overlooked and I prioritize, but for you as that player, when did that click finally happen?
So college, I went to a very small school, so we didn't have those, you eat what you can at the diner. Once I got to the league, my first couple of years, I can't lie, my nutrition was kind of all over the place. I was still young. I didn't I could go out to practice. I didn't have to warm up. I didn't get sore. It was just like, oh yeah, I'm out here. As I got older, around year 5 or 6, things started, taking a little longer to warm up. I have some sugar that week and I worked out and it's like, ooh, man, I am sore for a lot longer than I used to be. So as I got older, I think it definitely became more important. I can always tell when I had too much sugar. I work out and I'm sore for like 3-4 days. So things like that, as you get older, especially in the sports world, just because it's so hard on your body, it becomes very important. If you can get on it earlier, obviously that's better. But I think for around year 4 or 5, I really was like, okay, I need to start, watching what I eat, especially during season. Off season, I'm a little more, I'm a little more liberal with what I eat. But during season, I try to, watch the sugar, watch things that are going to keep me inflamed, and things like that. So it definitely showed up midway through my career.
Now, do you think, Justin, just real quick, do you think that guys that are coming from bigger universities that have team dietitians at those universities, do you think that they are more attuned to the nutrition at an earlier age, or do you still see a lot of them going towards the middle of their career before they start, getting on and listening to their bodies and picking up on the nutrition aspect?
I think they do. I think they're more aware of it, because they've been made aware. They have one, so they've kind of been. What's the word I'm looking for? Whatever. They've been shown how to, have a good diet, but you still kind of see it. There'll be young guys who come in, they're still eating a lot of fast food. It's like, oh, I gotta have my McDonald's. And I think that just kind of attributes to, being young. When you're younger, you feel better. You can eat whatever you want. You don't really have any kind of problems like that. But like I said, as you get older, those things, you eat some McDonald's, you're going to kind of, you feel it the next day. So I think they are more aware of it. But, I think it's just the fact that they're younger and their bodies don't get affected by having bad nutrition as it would somebody who's a little older.
Gotcha. Now, Keith and Mike, here's a question for you too. Are there any limitations made by team management for you as the chefs? If there are, what are they typically? So, I'm thinking, it's not spelled out here, but I'm thinking, food cost. Is there, obviously budget you have to be aware of, but what else might there be from your perspective?
So yeah, I guess I would only say that really budget you're really worried about. I've never really been limited to what we could cook. It was more about asking for what more we could cook, really. I guess with baseball, you would have a little more like Latin kind of cuisine added into it, and like Dominican Republic and kind of Latin culture food with it. But other than that, I don't really feel like there was much limitations from any team management.
Keith, what about you?
Directly, I would say no, but you do have to adhere to a budget for sure. There's numbers that you need to stay in with managing your cost per meals and things of that nature. Or if you need to buy supplies for the kitchen, you need to buy a new set of pans. You want to buy a new toy to play around with. You gotta run that through the management, as well as staffing and hiring and payroll and that kind of thing. Well, I wouldn't say it's limiting, but you need to have a discussion about it for sure. And then you need to be prepared with the information to address a goal that you were trying to achieve, or find a happy medium if there is a discrepancy. But generally speaking, no. But that doesn't mean that ultimately the organizations are all businesses. They all are trying to make money. It's not like an open bank to do whatever you want to do. But
Gotcha. Now, this one's for all three of you. Where do you get your culinary inspiration from? I mean, it takes a lot to constantly put out new menus for players. Justin, cooking for yourself, cooking for your family. Where do you turn to get this inspiration? Keith, Mike, I'm sorry.
Sure. Nowadays, internet and any kind of social media platform is really easy to just see a quick little dish that it's like, oh wow, I didn't think those flavors would go together, and then you try to do something yourself. try to switch up one or two ingredients and you find it just to be a really good dish. I still go into a bunch of my old cookbooks. I still kind of flip through all those pages and find something that I haven't used before. And then other than that, it's more, I think it's just a lot of just me trying random stuff at my house, figuring out that it worked, and then making it into a bigger production and a bunch of people comment on it. And then from there, I just try to tweak it a little bit with maybe a different hot sauce or just a different technique or something like that to make it a little bit better. Other than that, a little bit all over the place for sure.
Gotcha. Keith?
Yeah, inspiration can come from a number of forms, whether it's Instagram or you go out to dinner with your significant other and you have a dish that maybe sparks a train of thought on something else that you might like. For me, at a base level, seasonality is a huge contributor to my philosophy when being inspired to create some new stuff. And then from there, it kind of piggyback on a specific ingredient and then utilizing some cookbooks for inspiration too. Two of my favorite cookbooks to use for dish creation is the Vegetarian Flavor Bible and Vegetable Literacy. Those two are my current favorites for trying to utilize some inspiration because it doesn't take much. It's just, you know, one little tweak to a vegetable, and then you're off and running on something totally different. At least for me.
Awesome. Justin, what about for you? For your personal cooking and for your family, where do you get your inspiration from?
Yeah, I'd say kind of like Mike said, a lot of it is a whole bunch of different Instagram pages, social media. I have a couple cookbooks that I got, and it's also kind of just taking. You learn. I see someone on Instagram. I learn how to make something. Like I learned how to make risotto off of this cookbook, and then once you learn how to do it, having that imagination to kind of just try different things. Once you kind of got the base technique of how to make something, and then just kind of exploring from there with things you already know how to do. So it's kind of, getting the inspiration from cookbooks, social media, but then taking your own imagination and trying to make it something different than what you learned.
Nice. Now, here's another question from the chat for you all, for Mike and Keith. How do you guys collaborate with the support staff on your team to periodize the menus? Obviously, we talked about you talking to the dietitian, but what about the strength and conditioning folks, the rest of the coaching staff? Do they really have an impact on your menus, on timing of foods, to that effect?
A little bit here and there for sure. We always, at least with baseball, we always made sure to just have healthy meals available. Like one option might have been a little bit heavier than a typical just rice, broccoli, and grilled chicken. But we always had those like simple menu items on the side if someone really wanted to do that. But we definitely did ask like, hey, for a certain practice week, which baseball, we didn't get too many of those, but like we'd make sure to be like, hey, what's a heavy day? Like, what's your light days? What's the recoveries? And then this past year, we were actually able to start doing that with one of our starting pitchers, Nate Navaldi, where he approached us and really wanted to understand it a lot better, where obviously with starting pitchers, they only pitch on 1 out of 4 or 1 out of 5 days. So with him, it was like, what should I do right after the pit, or right after my game? I'm sorry. And then day 1 recovery, day 2 recovery. What should I be eating? What should I do here? What should I do there? Just to try to get him really prepared for his next start. And then other than that, I kind of lost my train of thought. I'm sorry. I'll let Keith go ahead.
It's all good.
So yeah, they're definitely a factor for sure. From a timing standpoint, all the staff and trainers eat prior to the players. because they're usually here getting ready for their day or setting up the locker room or setting up the gym or their respective responsibilities before the players get there. So they're typically the ones who are eating first, be it before practice or before the game. So, from our logistic and time management standpoint, they play a huge factor. And then secondary to that, they're also a second line of communication between us and the players, where we might not have the specific immediate feedback that we would need from the players because they have their own obligations and are busy doing other stuff, where maybe we can have a quick discussion with the strength trainer about feedback or needs for a player instead of trying to wait to get a one-on-one discussion going. So they're great liaisons between us and them for communication, for sure. Or in the event where there's, a meal that we might prepare that we have the luxury here that we're pretty face-to-face with them at the practice rink, but at the arena we're a little bit removed from direct interaction when they're eating it, So being able to get feedback after the fact from them is super helpful.
Now, have you all, and Justin, obviously with your experience, have you ever had palate fatigue where you're just like, I just can't eat anymore? And, how do you, from Keith and Mike, how do you, keep players interested? It's a long season when we look at either football, baseball, hockey, it goes a while. And for these athletes to consume, as you know, Justin, vast amounts of calories, it gets to be very cumbersome after a while. I mean, there's been so many social media accounts out there from famous actors, talking about trying to bulk up for roles and having to eat all these calories, and it gets very boring. So what do you do from the chef standpoint to keep their palates excited, to keep them entertained? And Justin, as that player, how do you mentally do this? I mean, it's tough. So Mike?
Yeah, definitely. With like baseball, you could have a 12-day homestand, and we did about 3 meals a day with like 2 different proteins, 2 different starches, 2 different vegetables. So by the end of the day, you're already seeing almost every single option you could really think of. So kind of what Justin relayed back to earlier with just listening to the players, kind of understanding what they want, because at the end of the day, obviously you don't want to just serve them the same stuff over and over again. So even if you're just making one guy a little happy and then try to get the other guy happy the next day, it's a battle for sure. But you just try to do different sauces. You try to just give them different options, show them it in a different way, like with like a bolognese option, like use a different pasta, change up the sauce a little bit, and then try to serve it to them just a little bit different. Because most of the times, like in those long days, like for me at least, like I don't feel like everyone looks at it super detailed. It's just like, all right, cool. It's not chicken and rice. It's something different. So other than that, I think it's a big battle you have to deal with, but then having a good culinary background, just being able to switch it up a little bit will go really far for you.
Keith?
Yeah, communicating with the players for sure is definitely going to help alleviate any kind of monotony to the season of eating. They're your main source of information to change it up for them. They'll be like, maybe it's time we sneak a slider day in there because we need a reprieve from, the monotony of it. And then secondary to that, like one thing Chef Mike and I like to do is kind of, while we might have the same consistent mainstay, add an additional surprise selection in there that, in addition to the normal stuff, maybe switches it up, that where we didn't need to have a direct conversation, but we're going to add it into there anyway. And then you get immediate feedback by that based on whether or not the players are going to eat it or not, or go for it or all that. One that comes to mind immediately was one we had made, like a tropical fruit granada, and with some toasted coconut on top of it. And we had never done that before. And they loved it, lost it. And it was just broke up. It was just a small little frozen treat, but it made a huge difference in that day's routine.
That's awesome. Give them a little surprise to keep them entertained and excited to be there.
Yeah, exactly.
What about for you, Justin?
Yeah, so for me, I think this goes for a lot of athletes. We're all kind of creatures of habit. We're so used to being on a schedule and, having that repetition of the same thing every day. For me, like I'll eat the same thing for breakfast the whole season, and it doesn't bother me. It's just because I know when I wake up in the morning, I want pancakes, eggs, and some bacon. And that's with some cheese on it. That's my breakfast. And then for lunch, it's like, okay, yeah, let's get something different. And I think like our guys do a good job of sometimes like for a Taco Bell Crunch Wrap, they'll make it in a healthy way to where we can eat it. Or they'll have a hot station where they make a Tennessee hot chicken sandwich, and it's like, oh man, that was really good. And then you won't see it for a while, but it's something that they knew was everybody really liked it. And then, you still have your regular options. And then you have guys kind of expecting like, okay, when's this dish coming back? And then you throw that back in there, and it kind of, gives them that change, but it's something that that it went well with everybody. So that's kind of like I like that our guys do. They'll have a hot station where they just come up with something different. You might not see it for a while, but it'll pop back up eventually, and it changes that from that monotony of having the same thing every day.
Awesome. Well, gentlemen, we have to end this session. I'm going to toss it back to Chef Makouch for closing comments. For those of you that I didn't get a chance to answer or ask the questions in the question box, I apologize. I could stay here all day and talk to these gentlemen. So Keith, Mike, Justin, thank you so much for taking time out of your busy schedules to be with us. We greatly appreciate that from Johnson & Wales. Chef Makouch, the floor is yours, sir.
Yes, no, thank you everyone for such an insightful and impactful discussion. Your contributions are invaluable as we work towards creating a more equitable and resilient industry. Before we close, we must mention how grateful we are for the support we have received from Puritos, a global innovator offering high-quality products and expertise for artisans, industry, retail, and food service in baking, patisserie, and chocolate. With your sponsorship, we are able to offer this year's Fit Symposium program at no charge. We welcome your support of our students through donations to the CFIT scholarships. If you are in a position to support our talented CFIT students, please consider making a gift. Your donation will provide scholarships and financial aid directly to CFIT students, allowing them to pursue their passions at JW and position themselves to be the food leaders of tomorrow. You can find the donation link on the Fit Symposium page and also in the chat feature. We look forward to the chance to come together in person in spring 2023 when we will host the 3rd annual Fit Symposium here on campus. Thank you very much. Be well, everybody.